Good afternoon, greater Philadelphia area. This is Toole Time Real Estate Radio on WWDB 860 AM. I'm Tom Toole. She's Sarah Time, and he's DJ Sutera with Mortgage America. Sarah and I both work at the Tom Toole Sales Group at RE/MAX Mainline, the number one RE/MAX team in Pennsylvania since 2018. And we have got a lot to cover today. We're going to talk about rate projections and Fannie Mae's new forecast with DJ here at the end. We've got some DOJ news. It seems like this just keeps happening every week. The DOJ, I don't think they should be in the news that much at all, personally, but they're here. And we're also going to be talking about some of the housing price projections that we're expecting to see as we head into the end of this year and the beginning of next year. So if you get some value out of this, you'll like what you hear. Make sure to subscribe to our channel, click on the bell for notifications, and if you want to schedule a call with our team and Sarah specifically, you can do so with a link in the comments. So first and foremost, guys, and DJ, thanks for coming on, number one. I'm really curious to get your insights on a lot of this financial stuff here, as I know you're following it every day. So what's the best way for people to get a hold of you? Is it your website? What you tell us?
Yeah, I mean, you can just Google me, DJ, like a disc
Google
jockey,
me.
Sutera, Sutera, and all my stuff will pop up.
All right, very cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. So, and we work obviously with DJ a lot. Great resource for lending. So, where I wanted to start is we've seen some home price projections and forecasts start to come out for 2025. A little more tame than what we've seen in the past couple of years. So, we've got like 8 or 9 different forecasts here where we have Moody's kind of on the low end. They're looking at a 0.3% increase in home prices in 2025. Then you got Goldman Sachs on the high end at 4.4%. The other companies mentioned here, Wells Fargo, Mortgage Bankers Association, Morgan Stanley, Ivy Zelman, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac. The average of all of them is 2.5% in 2025. Obviously, that's a national number. Do we feel home prices are slowing down a little bit? Is this something you're seeing in the market?
I mean, honestly, like it's all home specific. I feel like,
Sure.
But no, like I haven't really been seeing a ton of that. If this is the national average, I think that here in our local market, we're gonna see the projection, a little bit higher than what that national average is. It's certainly not the leaps and bounds that we had been seeing for a bit there, but it's a stable, steady, healthy growth in my opinion.
What do you deal with appraisals, so I think it's a little different. So are you seeing like less scrutiny, more scrutiny on the appraisal side? Because when you sell a home, you got to sell it 3 times. To the realtors to show it, the buyer who's going to write up a contract that's acceptable, and then to the mortgage company so it appraises. You're probably the least fun of all the 3 sales.
I would agree with that. I think those projections are really conservative, probably too conservative, and I think that I'm a very conservative person. I got a hunch that it's going to be, if the average of that you said was like 3%, I'm thinking it's going to be triple that, to be honest with you.
So you think we're going to see 9% appreciation over the next year?
Yeah, I mean, look, I've been doing this for a little while, not as long as you, but yeah, I mean, there's so much pent-up demand. We have 2 million household creation events happening in this country every year, which means like making babies, getting married, graduating, relocation, all of these things we count on as maybe transactionary events, and we do not have the housing supply to keep up with that, and it's been happening for years and years, and it's still ongoing. So there's a lot of pent-up demand and not enough houses. Prices are going up.
So Bank of America also published their forecast. It wasn't in this chart that we put up there. They're expecting 5% appreciation in 2025, followed by a much slower 2026 based on a couple assumptions. One is the U.S. economy calling for some normalization after the pandemic, which I think a lot of people are hoping for. So that's, and the other is that there's just there's going to be some issues with disposable per capita income for personal folks. So personal income per capita, they feel like there's going to be not enough of that, which I think affordability is kind of another issue with inflation and some other things. I know a lot of people are feeling a pinch there. So, you know, with these, I I look at these projections that nationally, sure. I mean, we got markets like Austin and Florida where prices aren't going up, and then we've got places like here where I think it's a little more aggressive. So I could see that being the case more locally for sure. I think what's the number? 6.7% is where prices are up year over year in the Philadelphia area. So that's a good basis point here. So how are you guys advising your clients right now? Because I think that's what a lot of people listening are wondering. Like a seller's like, well, prices will go up. Maybe I should hang tight. Buyers are saying, well, what if rates come down? Like, so what's seeing this data, how do you explain this to people that are considering a transaction over the next 6, 12, 18 months?
I mean, the way that I would handle it is that we do not have a crystal ball. All of these are projections, but that we know that, we have a healthy market here. So prices are not going to go down. They're not. And if you choose to wait in hopes that the interest rates are going to come down, more likely than not, if you're waiting, other people are waiting too. Once they drop down, you have more competition that's flooding in. You're going to have to go up higher on the purchase price. Your monthly payment may ultimately be the same, and you're losing out on that time of getting equity into the home. I mean, you can always, if interest rates do drop to a point where it makes sense to refinance, that is an option that you would have, but you can't change the price of the house once you purchase it. So if you're able to afford the payment, with rates being where they are and with the purchase price being whatever it is that you're going in at, that's the way to go. Like holding on, like who knows, prices could go up even higher than what's being projected, and rates could increase as well, and then that's a double whammy of so you can never time the market perfectly, but if you're in a situation where getting the home is the win, then move forward.
Yeah, well said. I would say something very similarly.
What she said.
What she said. What she said. Yeah, I think you only pay one price for the house, and we don't know what interest rates are going to do. There's a lot of data pointing to the interest rates lowering over the next year, as I know that's a topic we're going to discuss.
Sure.
But yeah, and with that comes higher prices of homes. It's if you can afford to do it now, just do it, even if it might feel a little tight. The justification is your income growing by the percentage of these home prices, because you're only going to get priced out year after year that you wait.
I've never really seen someone regret stretching a little bit for a property, because especially when you're going to be in there long term, because it's when you don't and you compromise, then what ends up happening is you have to move again. So I don't know what you've seen, Sarah, or if that's been the case for you, DJ, but I've never seen people really regret that, and knowing that they're on the ascent in their career. I think that's a really good point. Growing into the payment is a very real thing for a lot of folks. Yes, so that makes a lot of sense. And when I look at this data, what I see is that, I mean, you got 0.3 up to like 5% of the projections. A lot of people are going to be wrong. Like, there's going to be someone that's right there. And what I'm not seeing locally in the greater Philadelphia area is any signs that prices are dropping. It's probably more stable. This is like what it used to be like before the pandemic. I think a lot of people forget that. Like 3%, like fine. 5%, cool. It's not this 10% year over year appreciation that a lot of people are expecting. So I tend to agree with this from a national level, just because you got places like Austin that are getting their butt kicked right now, and they overbuilt and they have too much. So then there's the other factor here, and you had mentioned this, DJ, is that the U.S. housing market right now, according to Freddie Mac, is 1.5 million housing units below a balanced market, and that would mean that it's there's not an oversupply, there's not an undersupply, it's kind of like just right. So I think that hits home harder in the Northeast, where we don't see a lot of new construction happening. So I mean, you talking about like these situational things. I don't see any situation that's going to have this plethora of inventory hitting the market.
Right, and in all the years that I've been doing this, I've heard a lot of, for people that purchased, like, I'm so glad I did it when I did it, and that's regardless of the time frame that it happened. Like, when rates were low, but they paid, when it felt initially like, oh my gosh, we're going in so much over ask and we're waiving these different things. They were glad they did it. Then further along, rates were higher, but the values were continuing to go up. So they were like, I'm so glad I locked in when I did. I've had a lot of people have regrets about not getting into things, but I'm yet to come across somebody that is like, that was a bad decision and I wish I hadn't done it.
Yeah, I tend to agree.
Same.
So we got a conflicting opinion on this about the housing shortage, right? Because we talked a little bit about that. So Ground Floor CEO Brian Daly, he came out and said on Lance Lambert's website, the Resi Club, which I'm a big fan of, evidence suggests that the factors driving demand are changing, potentially challenging the perception of a supply shortfall. So he points to the housing shortage we just mentioned, but then what he also does is that there's been some revisions by the U.S. Census Bureau, and they have downgraded the population forecast for the U.S., where now it's not like right now. I mean, we're on an ascent here, but if you look at these lines, I mean, you see like 2008 was, it was like a hockey stick, and then in 2012 and 2017 it's been downgraded, still going up, but maybe not at that same high trajectory. The 2023 forecast is pretty interesting, and it's basically it's like a flattening out of the U.S. population in like the 360 to 380 million number, which were far surpassed by any other forecast that's been done. And the reason for that was, and they're saying it's a 3/4 change, was the lower expected fertility rate was one of them, which I thought was pretty interesting. So that obviously is something that I think, population growth will determine what happens here. So, I mean, do you buy that this could happen, the population could level out? Because that really never happened in the U.S. before.
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, just like housing affordability, child affordability.
Well, and I think waiting longer to have kids. And
that's very real.
Like, that's a real thing that, like, some people have no issues when they get older having kids and others have a lot. So I think that certainly factors in. I think occasionally you'll still come across people, like my age that have 4 kids, but I would say 2 is a lot more common, maybe 3. There's a few that I can think of that have 4, but like I was one of 4 and I felt like that was like pretty common, even just from when I was younger. Maybe it was still like a little more than like some had, but you don't see a ton of like the huge families. And yeah, I think like waiting later to have them reduces like how many you even like potentially could have, but then also you may have trouble having them.
Yeah, that's true. It's just more expensive overall. And if you're going to wait, it's going to be even more expensive.
Yeah.
Now you've got all these trends like freezing eggs and all the other technologies. It's so expensive. I say this as a person without kids, by the way.
So there's 2 studies I was able to find here. One comes from Statista, which is that in 2021, the U.S. Census Bureau counted 83.9 million families in the U.S. The average family was 3.13 people, down from 3.7 in the 1960s. So I think that's kind of what you're talking about there, Sarah. And in 1970, 56% of all family households had children under the age of 18. That's a lot more. There's another study. I love how these studies have like different sizes. So the average size of a U.S. household in 2023 is 2.51 people, down from 3.33 in the 1960s. So obviously the data set's not quite the same there, whatever they're looking at, but there's a decline either way you look at it. And I mean, you're right. I mean, when people have kids when they're older, I mean, they call you what, geriatric when you're 35 and having a baby?
Yes.
I
They sure do.
well,
To your face.
Yeah.
That's a tough term.
I mean, it happened to my wife. That's why
Happened to me.
I was there. You can speak for yourself. I'm not going to speak for you, Sarah, but it definitely happened when we were at the doctor. So, so that's a very interesting thing. So I do agree that could, and the population's still growing, but that's a factor. And this is the first time I've even heard this from anyone in housing, and that it's it's population growth is probably the most important thing for housing, and hasn't been much of a driver over the past 3 decades because of the availability of financing. But with higher rates and conditions, things change a little bit. So,
but even with the projected population here, I mean, it's going to be, even if people have fewer kids now, I guess then you don't need like as large of a house, so it may affect like what size housing you need now. But like for today, this doesn't really
This is a long-term
right?
thing, yes.
Yeah, like long term. Because like right now, like we're still where we're at, you know?
We've got baby boomers, we've got millennials. These are some of the largest generations ever recorded in U.S. history. So, yeah, we're thinking long term here with this.
Yeah, this is. I mean, the projections that they have here on this study, they go out to, where is it here? I mean, they're talking about it, seeing it flatten. It really starts in like 2080, 2090. Like that's when you see it kind of flattening out a little more. So something to think about. I mean, I think that the whole point though is that when you see a I look at this as normal appreciation. This looks like a normal market. And we've been saying this for how long, that the market's normalizing now, and we're not quite at those inventory levels from pre-2020, but where we're at like the 2021 levels now. So I think that's the, when inventory grows and price appreciation slows down, you're going to see more deliberate decisions, and that's where, it's probably even more important than ever to have someone that can help you navigate the market and understand it, which is why you want to have those, sort of local experts, whether it's in finance or in real estate. So let's take a quick break. We're going to come back. We're going to talk about the DOJ. They promised they were going to comment on some stuff, and they commented all right. We're going to break it down next on Toole Time Real Estate Radio on WWDB 860 AM.
So looking on the screen up here, it kind of looks like I'm like not wearing a shirt.
What?
I'm like kind of like blends into.
Smooth, easy
What
access.
show is this?
Whether you're a first-time buyer,
Views are
upsizing,
way
or
up on this episode,
downsizing,
so
or
I
just
don't know.
refinancing,
Got this geriatric.
Got this geriatric lady.
programs and access to subsidized interest rates. Pre-approval is
Yeah,
free,
wear a shirt
no
like this,
costs
so
or
it looks like I'm
commitments.
sure.
To learn more,
Yeah,
visit our
so
website
pale.
at mymortgageamerica.com or give us a call at 610-439-8000. We always have a person available to take your call with around-the-clock human service. Purchase your home with the personalized local service you find.
It's pretty smart.
Not robotic.
The Tom Toole Sales Group is the #1 RE/MAX team in Pennsylvania with over $165 million in volume for 2021. I'm Tom Toole, and our team has achieved that kind of success by being a great place to work with and to work for. No one knows Greater Philly better than we do. We know real estate, but more importantly, we're real people. We hire the best agents and we give them all the tools to succeed. Even our brand new agents sell 17 to 24 homes a year because our team delivers the best experience in real estate. Teams deliver a better experience than individuals, and we're a top 1% real estate team in the country. We call it AAA service. We're your advocate, ally, and advisor. Because this isn't a transaction to us, it's a relationship. If you're buying or selling a home, call the at RE/MAX main line at 610-692-6976 or visit tomtoole.com. That's tomtoole.com. Sell your home for more, and remember the real estate golden rule. You always get more when you work with Tom Toole.
When you're getting a mortgage, you shouldn't have to sacrifice great service just to get a great rate. At Mortgage America, we've been lending with this philosophy for over 35 years. We have access to great low rates without the complications and delays of big or online banks. We're a local Pennsylvania lender with loan officers that you can actually 30 seconds. GFA's #1 lender, we specialize in all residential mortgage programs, including first-time buyer programs and low down payment options. For your free pre-approval, call us at 610-439-8000 or apply online at mymortgageamerica.com.
Have you considered a career in real estate? Do you want control? That's income. Whether you have a license or not, call us today at 610-692-6976 or visit tomtoole.com. Join our team, the top at RE/MAX main line.
Welcome back to Toole Time Real Estate Radio on WWDB 860 AM. I'm Tom Toole. She's Sarah Timon. He's DJ Sutera with Mortgage America. Sarah and I both work at the Tom Toole Sales Group at RE/MAX main line, the #1 RE/MAX team in Pennsylvania since 2018. And we're going to be talking about the DOJ making news again about a couple of different organizations here, the Rex Zillow lawsuit, as well as an inquiry into standard forms in California. And then we're going to talk about the new Fannie Mae rate projections with DJ here to break down what he sees happening and what advice he has for people that are considering a purchase over the next 6, 12, 18, 24 months. If you like what you hear, you get some value out of this, make sure to subscribe to the channel, hit the bell for notifications. And if you want to schedule a call with our team, you can do so with the link in the comments. So the DOJ's back. This is like 2 weeks in a row, which I'm not thrilled about personally. So the DOJ came out and said they're going to have some opinions on some more legal stuff here around the commission lawsuits. And they came out Monday and they are filing a amicus brief. It was filed last week on June 20th, urging the Court of Appeals to reconsider its ruling on a case between Rex and Zillow earlier this year, and the ruling benefited the National Association of Realtors. So they argue in the filing that the judge took an incomplete approach that creates risk that associations like NAR could evade antitrust scrutiny with optional rules. So basically, while NAR insists it's got a no commingling rule and that's optional, Zillow followed the policy because it was necessary to retain the benefits of MLS access, and that kind of sounds like the NAR settlement. So the DOJ is calling out NAR, warning the trade association that just saying their policy is optional is not enough to prevent anti-competitive behavior. And now it's it obviously leads to some other things here. So what do you think about this decision, DJ and Sarah, about the DOJ coming out? They're filing another complaint. They're basically saying the same thing over and over. And in the judge, basically they're saying absolve NAR, and per the DOJ filing, might have created a loophole that could allow associations to sidestep antitrust scrutiny by cloaking restrictive rules as optional. What do you guys think?
Sarah, you want to comment on that?
I don't know. I mean, I feel like every week they're like coming out with something else. So wait, I'm just getting to the sheet over here. I mean, yeah, I feel like every week they like add on to it or like pull back from it. So it almost makes me wonder, like, will it ever actually be resolved, or is this just going to be like an ongoing churning thing forever?
Cliche legal battle that never ends.
Yeah.
Is kind of what it sounds like. I know you guys are way more on the pulse on this kind of thing than me, but just overarching ideals might be, we're always looking to provide the best service and make sure that the consumer is protected. And I know that might be the ethos behind some of what they're doing, but I mean, I don't know. It's just classic government to kind of just move like a dinosaur almost, just way too slow, being too careful about things, wasting a ton of money and time. So I don't know. That's my thought.
Is this a different judge or the same judge?
This is a different judge. This was the Rex. We talked about this a couple years ago. This was they in 2024. The beginning of the year in January, the district judge who heard the appeal, it was a Seattle jury, and he denied the request, saying that Rex's antitrust claims were without merit, because what happened was Rex didn't want to participate in the MLS, and then they were arguing, well, why aren't our listings on? They can't be on Zillow and other places, and that was the whole problem, because they didn't opt into the MLS. Well, since Zillow is a broker, and they are part of that, that was one of the issues that came up. So and to me it makes sense. I mean, because they weren't, they had their policy and they were following the policy. Now things are a little different, and I think DJ, to your point, I mean, the DOJ seems like they have an agenda here to, like, they were I mean, we talked about this last week. They were kind of instructed to look into real estate commissions and do these things by the current administration after they had come to a settlement agreement with NAR and went back on it, which is a whole problem. So this is just one of two. Let me read you the next one here, and then we can get some reactions. And then the second part of this is that the California Association of Realtors, they got standard forms, just like we do, right? And the forms that were being amended in light of the NAR settlement, there was an email that got sent out to industry leaders on Thursday that was obtained by Housing Wire, and the president of CAR, the California Association of Realtors, they said that California always issues updated forms every June. And this year, they're releasing 67 new or modified forms. 21 are related to the business practice changes in the commission lawsuit settlement. So about a third of them, and they're set to be released June 25th, but the 21 forms related to the business practice changes will be delayed because the DOJ wants to review them. So now we're seeing that the DOJ is getting involved in this, and Pennsylvania is kind of in the same boat. I know there was an email that went out last week. There's a webinar happening from PAR to go over these documents. I think the first one's July 16th, and now like the DOJ is getting into the forms. So we've got a forms question. They're looking into old cases. They said they'd have 2 comments this week. These were the 2 comments, obviously. I just don't get the sense that the DOJ is going to stop here.
Well, if they are approving the if they are like approving the forms, then there really wouldn't be like that should get ahead of it, right? Like if they're going through and they're looking at it, that would be a faster way to like either say like yes, we're good to proceed, or like no, we still have a problem, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, the deadline is quickly approaching for when they are saying all of this is going to go into effect. So if the DOJ does want to review state by state the forms that are being put out, either they're either going to have to delay the date that all of this has to be rolled out on, or I guess in the interim be okay with the forms that are out, but then probably file a lawsuit afterwards saying they don't agree with the forms. I don't know.
See, I think that's going to be the problem here because, I mean, they've got 50 states to go through, right? And California, I mean, they're the biggest state. So I can understand in terms of like, population, real estate. I can see why California was targeted there. They also have the largest MLS in the country. And the MLSs seem to be a big part of all this. I think we could be pretty close to that because Bright is the number 2 MLS in terms of size in the country, but it encompasses a lot of different states. So it's a little different. So, what I get concerned about is like we have these commission settlements and everyone agrees, and then we start doing things and like this isn't good enough and we're going to keep going. And when you overturn a written signed settlement where there's an agreement, you're setting the precedent that contracts don't mean anything.
Right.
So
which is a problem.
This is a major problem. Now the flip side of this is that depending on who gets elected in November, this issue could go away because this didn't exist when the previous settlement was negotiated pre-2020. And this is not a political comment, but the election is basically a coin flip at this point. I think it's probably fair to say. It could go either way.
Yeah.
And what we know is that the previous administration, at least the president was part of that previous administration, the presidential candidate for the other side. So this could, or they may temper it back a little bit. I mean, I don't know what happens here. And if I'm NAR, what I'm probably doing is buying as much time as I can until we see who gets elected. Like just kick the can down the road a little bit here. Because that would be a strategy that would make sense because then all of a sudden the rules of engagement have changed a little bit.
Well, then it almost seems like it would make the most sense to make these changes not go into effect until then.
Until Q4.
Well, I don't think the lawyers for the plaintiffs and Michael Ketchmark are going to be okay with that. I mean, that's part of that's like the challenge here. So
They already got paid.
Well,
They don't care.
not yet. Almost. He's close. It's all very interesting. I mean, there's clearly an agenda here. I mean, I just when they've gone into what the MLS pin suit. Now they're commenting on a case that was closed, appealed, and denied back in January. You've got this forms inquiry. I think this just keeps going. I think you're right. This is going to keep going.
Right, and like what's unfortunate is there's all of this talk about it that creates uncertainty amongst everyone, right? And the end result, is it even going to be meaningful or impactful or matter like for some of the things that they're trying to do? I don't know.
Hopefully not with this most recent one.
Right. So it's I don't know, like I mean I think we all want to be informed and know what's going on, but part of me wants to be like, hey, in several years when you figure out what you're doing, let us know. Like
the frustrating thing that I see is that we're still going to have to do business during this time. So we use this form, but then they're changing their mind. I mean, they're putting professionals at risk that are going to follow the protocols, right? I mean, we train on this all the time at this point. I mean, it's an ongoing thing. We've got 2 this week about the NAR settlement, what to do, and we still don't have docs yet. We're 50 days out, let's call it, right? 52 days out from the settlement, something like that. And that's a challenge. And so for the people that, the consumer ends up suffering here, and the whole purpose of this lawsuit is transparency around fees. I think that's the which I'm a big proponent of. I think that's totally fine. when that's happening, some of these things they're doing are counterintuitive. And then you got this other issue that's coming up where not every MLS is realtor owned, right? Like we happen to be part of one.
Mhm.
Well, about half of the broker owned MLSs have not opted into the settlement. So you got this going on as well. So do you think we're going to see more disruption here, Sarah?
Yes.
I'm curious what would be the alternative if these brokerages were to shy away from the MLS. What is an alternative?
Well, so it's not the brokerages shying away; it's the MLSs themselves. So
Okay.
our MLS is owned by realtors, and you have to be a member of the board.
Mhm.
We're tied to it. There's other ones that aren't, which I see as like a competitive advantage because you could drop the realtor designation if you wanted to.
Mhm.
So, and some of these MLSs, like, I mean, there's one called My State, right? It's a privately held broker MLS that has 62,000 subscribers. And they never required buyer brokerage compensation and always had a no field option on a per listing basis. So they've been doing this already. Like, this is the point. Like, there's some people that were doing this. Right, you had to put $1 in. I mean, I don't see that.
Right.
Like, that's kind of silly. So I get that part. I also do like the requirement to have a contract with somebody before looking at a home.
Yeah,
I think that is going to
that's-
be a really positive change for a lot of folks.
Yeah,
Agreed.
no, I'm completely on board with that. It just seems counterintuitive that if everything is about transparency, removing a piece of information that was transparent and now is not just doesn't make a ton of sense to me.
Well, yeah, and I mean, and the NAR already implemented a lot of the changes from the DOJ investigation before they changed their mind, if you want to
Right.
call it that. So that had already happened. There's other MLSs like this. There's the Atlanta-based broker-owned First MLS, which has 57,000 subscribers. They're also not opting in, and they told Inman that they never had a rule requiring an offer of compensation, and they've never been part of the compensation between a seller and a buyer. They've never been part of that. And the MLSs have a point. That's not like an MLS. Like the MLS is the one doing it. They're just communicating things.
Right.
So they asked, Michael Ketchmark was asked, what happens to the MLSs that don't opt in? And what he said was if an MLS does not opt in and there's proof that it is violating our nation's antitrust laws, we will take swift legal action. But it sounds like they're already doing what was supposed to be done anyway. Like instead of kind of like they never had that force field in the first place. So, and if you do opt in, you have to ban offers of compensation. But then you got people like Brighton and the California MLS. They're putting the concessions field in. Like, what's the difference?
Right, like if you are able to put the concessions and that sticks, then that's fine. Like I'm good with that. And then but it also at the same time is like, so this whole thing was created over like we're changing what we're calling it. We're calling it a concession rather than a commission. It's the same thing, you know. But like, fine if that like makes them feel like they got a win, because I feel like also like they got so far into it, like the likelihood of them just being like, oh, never mind, like is pretty unlikely. You know, they're pretty far into it. They've invested a lot of time, a lot of money. They're going to want to see some change. So if that's like the win that works for everybody, you know, I think that would be great.
I think the win is exactly what you said, Tom. Is buyers agents being really clear up front about how they're getting paid and what they're getting paid.
Mhm.
That I think that was maybe the ethos behind all of this.
Yeah.
And I think every agent worth their salt has received that message already,
Yeah.
loud and clear.
Well, there's like different buckets of agents. We talked about this last week, where there's people that they feel entitled to commission, and they're because they showed a house, right? They showed one house and they think they're entitled to it. Then there's the amateurs who feel like they can serve the public without any sort of education. I'm sure you run into these people as much as we do. Then you've got like the commission leeches that will do anything to close a deal, but the client is going to not benefit. And then there's people that actually know what they're doing. I call them the knowledge brokers. And if everyone falls into that bucket, I mean, you're going to have a conversation. I can't imagine like, and there's going to be some people that break this rule. Like that's a given. I think it's almost like I'd be shocked if it didn't happen that way, because the same thing happened during COVID. People were out showing properties they weren't supposed to in Pennsylvania. Much different situation, but the laws and the rules are what you got to follow. So, I'm hoping what happens is the industry elevates itself from this, and when we go over like the scripts and dialogues, I don't think anything's that difficult. Like you were in that training today. Was anything there like that complicated to explain?
No. And I think that like the less you want to say enough so that you are making clear what is happening, but giving way too much information just like creates more uncertainty almost, or like causes a lot of like, well, what if? It's just like, hey, this is what's happening, deep, and this is kind of how, these are the ways that it can kind of come together, and we'll be clear going into each property what the deal is. And kind of like giving way too much information, or at like such a high, like we need to know it at all of these different levels because it's our business. But to your everyday consumer, giving them the information that they need to know, but not overly like confusing them with way too much detail, I think is the right play.
Got it.
Agreed.
I tend to agree. I mean, and that's where, you go to an attorney, you go to a mortgage company. I mean, you probably have some people that are like, hey, I trust you, I like what we're doing, we're just going to sign off on it. And you got others that are going to ask a lot of questions. You get less of the former when you don't know what you're talking about. And that's really where this is going to be critical. So I totally agree with what you're saying there, Sarah. So let's take a quick break. We'll monitor the DOJ as this continues to happen. This story's not going away. We're going to take a quick break. We're going to come back and talk about rate projections with DJ here. I want to get his take on this, especially like the post-op of the Fed meeting a couple weeks ago. Next on Toole Time, Real Estate Radio on WWDB 860 AM.
You shouldn't have to sacrifice great service just to get a great rate. At Mortgage America, we've been lending with this philosophy for over 35 years. We have access to great low rates without the complications and delays of big or online banks.
Somebody that went to look at Mary's place this morning wants to go back again to the same client, which is great, but there's a 4-hour window, like, so I've been having to like, and they're trying to like get out there now, so I'm just like, yeah. And then my stupid computer was ringing, and I was like, I don't know, is that me?
You shouldn't have to deal with all the red tape when getting your mortgage from a big or online bank. At Mortgage America, we have access to big bank money, but with the personalized and detailed service of a local bank. We are here in your community and ready to serve with fast settlements, low down payment options, and first-time homebuyer programs. Pre-approval is free, no costs or commitments. For more information, visit our website at mymortgageamerica.com or give us a call at 610-439-8000.
I'm Tom Toole of the Tom Toole Sales Group at RE/MAX Main Line. If you're thinking of becoming a real estate agent in the greater Philly area, I have a special offer for you. Our team did $165 million of volume in 2021, making us the #1 RE/MAX team in Pennsylvania,
Been talking to them initially,
1% team nationally. Our agents love us because we offer them a successful career, a great life, and an unbeatable culture.
Same thing happened when I
Agents
bought
who've
my
been with
house.
us for at least
I
a year,
trust TV.
average 30 plus
I'm like,
sales.
Kevin, I think
Even our
before you started
brand
working
new
there,
agents
I'm
average
like,
17 to 24
told
sales
Kevin,
a
I'm
year.
like, I don't
We
trust
offer
people
proven
say-
systems and expert training.
He was like,
We
you
help
can
you
get a
set
better rate
more
at a big bank.
appointments
I'm
and
like,
sell more
I'm
houses.
like,
Right, like
Now
I'm
here's the
close.
offer.
Well,
If you don't have a real estate
this was
license
like
yet,
2020,
we
so
offer
like by the
real
time we
estate
closed, it was like
scholarships
May, we
so you
bought
can
it.
get
And
one
then
for
it was
free.
August when we closed, so
Check
the
it
price
out
went
at
up like,
scholarshipprogram.com.
I'm
Or
like, do you mind
visit
like
the
running
Tom
this
Toole
account, whatever
Sales
you
Group
need?
at RE/MAX
And
Main
a
Line
week
at
before, it's like, oh, you can't
TomToole.com.
close, you're too risky.
That's
I'm like,
Tom, Toole
like,
with an
and the guy
E,
texted me,
.com.
we're great at everything
Get
we do.
more
I'm
out
like,
of your
apparently
real
not
estate
this.
career, and remember the real estate golden
Fuck
rule.
yourself.
You always get more when you
Right,
work
so
with
you
Tom
had
Toole.
like
Have you
Kevin
considered a career in real
simultaneously
estate?
Wait, you want to
running
jump
the
a
file.
loan? It was like, and I have like, it's like, it's like an LLC, we have like rental properties, like all this.
692-6976 or visit tomtoole.com.
Well,
Join
that's
our
probably what
team,
tripped
the
TV
Tom
up.
Toole Sales
Right,
Group at
they don't know what they're
RE/MAX.
looking at yet.
Yeah.
All right. Welcome back to Toole Time Real Estate Radio on WWDB 860 AM. I'm Tom Toole. She's Sarah Timon. He's DJ Sutera with Mortgage America. Sarah and I both work at the Tom Toole Sales Group at RE/MAX Main Line, the #1 RE/MAX team in Pennsylvania since 2018. And we are talking about the latest Fannie Mae rate projections and a Bright MLS study that talks about rates that are not deterring buyers, even though they've been elevated for a little bit. We'll break it down here in a second. If you like what you hear, you get some value out of this, make sure to subscribe to the channel, hit the bell for notifications, and if you want to schedule a call to talk about how these rates may impact your real estate plans with Sarah specifically, make sure to click on the link in the comments. So I shared this chart. We went over it on Monday, Sarah, at our market memorandum that Fannie Mae has and I do like this chart. I think it's really helpful. They publish it every month. This came out for June 2024. They are predicting rates are going to be on average 6.5% throughout 2025. There's a range of 6.6 to 6.3. And for the rest of this year, 6.8% is going to be the average. They're predicting a 6.8% average 30-year fixed in the third quarter, 6.7 average in the fourth quarter. I tend to agree with these projections. I think we're going to see a pretty stable market here. What do you guys think about these projections first? We can talk a little bit about how the Fed plays into this, but what's your reaction to seeing what Fannie Mae is sharing, and how are you sharing that with consumers when rates come up?
Yeah, I mean, I think these numbers make a lot of sense. And having, many would like to see a lower rate. These rates are not terrible. And honestly, having them just be consistent takes a lot of the uncertainty out of it. Because I feel like when they are like week to week or day, like we were having some time frames where like every day they were different, and it just puts an extra question of like, well, what if we wait until tomorrow?
Mm-hmm.
When like, well, the house might not be there, and what if it goes up rather than down? So I think having some stability is, in my eyes, not a bad thing. And with it going out, if they're projecting that out through 2025, that's a year and a half away of rates being about the same. So if you're trying to hold on for those rates to drop, like a year and a half, I mean, it goes quickly in some senses, but that's a while. That's not like next quarter. It's a significant period of time.
Yeah. Overall, when rates are so volatile, you very rarely leave the consumer feeling like they got a good deal and like they made the most of it.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes they do, but I guess maybe the negative experiences just, I remember them.
Right. Well, because you're probably either like, as you were giving, because for your clients, when they go to put in offers, like you're running the numbers for them or whatever. So you're probably either like the hero if like it just so happened that they took a dip and it's like, hey, actually they came in better, or you're like, and it's something you have zero control over, but then you're like the bearer of bad news that's like, hey, they went up.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, and also what's been interesting is over the last little while, like maybe a couple of years, and I know you've talked about it, Tom, how much margin the consumer level banks have to keep within their rates in order to make sense of all of the movement going on. The analysts are very bullish, so as soon as they feel like even a little bit of news has come out to justify lower rates, they'll bring them on down, and then they'll get another piece of quick news and be like, oh, never mind, gotta bring them on back up.
Right.
And so that's what's been doing it. And I think lately, these bullish analysts have been shot down enough times over the last 6 months to a year where they're like, all right, we should kind of cool off here,
right?
Because we can't afford to keep getting this wrong.
You
know? And so, yeah, I totally agree with this projection that we're going to see the rates come down a very small amounts through the rest of this year, and it'll be a slow but steady decline through next year. So
I like the stability for consumers because they know what to expect. I mean, certainty can go a long way when you're making a big home purchase like this. And Sarah, you said it earlier, if rates do dip, the last time that happened was the financial meltdown or global pandemic. I don't think anybody wants to see that anytime
not good
soon.
Things.
Probably not good for home values
right.
either. So, I mean, that would be the first thing. And then secondly, if they do come down, there's the ability to refinance. And this is not like a marry the house, date the rate. Anyone that says that should be just stricken of their license for whatever field they're in. It's horrible advice. So I do agree with you there. I also like the stability of this. And I mean, we get your rate quotes every day, and obviously that's like an A+ situation, but they're right in line with that, maybe even a little lower, which is exciting. So,
right.
And that's locally. That has to do with the local markets, and I think a lot of people don't realize that. Now, the flip side of this is with these rate projections, right? So I think to me, there's like two groups of agents out there right now. There's one that are like, oh, rates are high, this stinks, like they're just crying in their soup. And then there's other people that are saying, yeah, well, we're going to transact anyway. And there was a Bright survey that was done, and of all the agents that were surveyed, 50% out of 463 buyer agents said their clients plan to buy regardless of mortgage rates. Another 23.5% had clients who paid with cash, which I've never seen that percentage so high before, but it's definitely been rising, especially with like a lot of family money coming into play. I don't know if you see that on your end too, where you're seeing like gift money and baby boomer parents to their maybe kids that are in like their 30s.
Yes.
That's been something that's been pretty common, more than you would think. And then 16.4% said rates were a factor, but not the primary one when they were buying. So, I mean, do you get a lot of pushback on rates right now? Has that waned a little bit for you? What? Tell me more about what you've seen in terms of like now versus the fall where rates were close to 8. I mean, it's been a little bit of a wild ride.
Definitely, it's waned. When they first started going up, I mean, there was no trust at all. They were like, no way. There's not a 6 handle on this. No way. There's not a 7 handle on this.
Mm-hmm.
And then for the unfortunate some, no way. There's not an 8 handle on this.
Mm-hmm.
It happened, but it's been getting better and better. Depending on the scenario, there's a lot of strategies. Whether it deal with like average median income, you know, there's little tricks of the trade that might be able to get you a lower interest rate. Or the first-time buyer programs, yada yada, adjustable rate mortgages. But people have more often than not accepted where the rates are, and so it does make for just a little bit more of a comfortable buying experience to not have to convince them that the rate is just going to be what it is.
Mm-hmm.
You know, sometimes they, earlier the past couple of years, it just, they shied away from the entire experience because of it, but now those folks are getting back in or just accepting where it is. So,
and then I mean, there was like the advertised rates there. That's like for if all of your ducks are in a row and you've got, your credit is of a certain score. Like there's a lot of pieces that go into advertising that rate. Do you get a lot of confusion or disappointment from clients who, like, if they're kind of aware of what like the average rate is and then theirs is like significantly higher?
Yeah, it's a conversation that'll come up because anybody can just go on bankrate.com or just Google what are the interest rates right now, and it'll spit out a number. But that should be taken with a grain of salt because a lot of times there might be points, which is added fees into that rate to buying it a little lower. There's sometimes not a full consideration of cost of doing business within those rates, just in general. And people will sometimes just need to see what it really looks like for them, because that is based off of a near perfect buyer, and not all of us out there are perfect, as much as we like to think so.
Very true.
Well, the other piece of good news I see with these rates is that for the people that want to wait, Sarah, and you talk about timing the market a lot, that I don't see a real incentive to do that. I mean, if let's say prices go up on the 3%, right, and if that's kind of the middle number there, or 2.5, and rates are coming down maybe a quarter of a point,
right.
But if you're renting, right, so it's not just you're not building equity, you're also, that money's going somewhere else, and I think that's the thing people don't realize. So there really is a cost to waiting there, and with the Fed downgrading their rate cutting forecast, only one for this year and maybe more aggressive next year. I mean, we'll see what happens next year. I think it's always tough to predict, but I do anticipate we're going to see much more stable rates, and stability in the market's not a bad thing. I see this as a win for a lot of people. I remember how volatile it was last year.
Yeah.
Like, it was every single week you were dealing with, like, rates went up, rates went down. I mean, you probably had to go through a lot of relocks, I would imagine.
Oh yeah.
And that can be obviously problematic for a lot of folks. I mean, there's fees sometimes associated. So it sounds like the stable market's going to benefit a lot of people, at least in my view.
I agree.
Agreed.
All right, you want to follow DJ? He's very active on Instagram, posts a lot of videos there. You can follow him at DJ Sutera, just like it sounds, excuse me. DJ Sutera on Instagram. You can follow Sarah, she's at Ty_Ty Time. You can follow me at TomToole3RD. And we'll be back next week on Toole Time Real Estate Radio on WWDB 860 AM.
Thank you very much.
That was good.
Good.
keep asking to come on, dude.